Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome to The Apartment Gurus, where twice a week, host Tate Siemer brings you deep dive interviews with the wisest gurus in the apartment investing industry. These experts are sure to create game-changing value and inspiration designed to catapult your business to the next level. Be sure to reach out to Tate at www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. And now, here is Tate Siemer and the Apartment Gurus.
Welcome, everybody, back to another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast. And today we're kind of continuing in a series of guests that are basically owner-operators of their own acquisitions and syndication firms. And I love doing these because, you know, people are at different points in their progression in this business, and there's no like comparison here. There's no like we're just all learning from each other. So we've got a great guy on the show today. Zach Haptonstall, excuse me, is here on the show with us, and Zach is the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity and Rise 48 Communities, based in Phoenix, Arizona. And his main responsibilities include overseeing all acquisitions, sourcing capital, and building strategic partnerships. He now lives in Scottsdale with his wife, Grace. And he's got his portfolio at is it 35 million currently, Zach?
No, it's actually 1.2 billion right now.
Wow. Okay. I wasn't reading that right.
I think
that's amazing.
Bio. Yeah. Sorry, Tate. Our team here, an outdated bio.
Okay, cool. That's amazing. That's phenomenal. Yeah.
Thanks,
you might be, well, I've had Michael Becker on. I've had a few people on that are probably over 1 billion, but that's just a tremendous achievement. So, dude, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to talk to you about, how you got to that point and what you did. And I know this will create a lot of value for listeners.
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I really appreciate you having us on the show, man, and happy to be here and look forward to providing some value for all the listeners here. But yeah, I mean, in regards to kind of my background, I was born and raised here in Phoenix, Arizona, so lived here my entire life. Just born into a lower middle class family, no real estate background, no rich uncle or anything like that. And so probably like a lot of the listeners, I was just taught you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, get a good job, et cetera. And so that's kind of the path that I was on. And so I wanted to be a sports reporter. So I got a journalism degree. I was a live news anchor, sports reporter for Arizona PBS for a short time, which was cool at first. And then, I quickly realized you can't make any money in journalism. And I had all this student debt. And I really wasn't happy. I was like, this is not what I want to do. So I needed to make money and try to, gain some type of financial foundation because I basically took out student loans. I worked full-time nights and weekends to put myself through school. And so after I graduated, I was like, I don't want to have, a bunch of debt and me living this life paycheck to paycheck. So I went into healthcare marketing, working for a hospice organization. So I was a marketer, then became a director of marketing, later became president and co-owner of a large hospice organization here in Phoenix. Wow. Got my MBA. We had 110 employees and was fortunate to do very well in healthcare. And, by the time I was 23, I was making like $150K a year, making more money than both my parents combined. So I was fortunate. I bought my first house when I was 23. I paid all my school off, had no debt. So, by the time I was 26, 27, I was making 200K a year, had no debt, had a house, had a lot of savings, and was, established, but I was just unhappy. I wasn't fulfilled. That's not what I wanted to do. And it was always like, what have you done for me lately? Whenever you're in, this W-2 job, you're well paid. So January 2018, I resigned, sold my equity in that company, and lived off of savings for over a year to figure out how to get into real estate and somehow make passive income. And I wasn't even thinking multifamily. I knew nothing about multifamily or syndication. My whole thing was I wanted to try to gain control back of my own personal time because I felt like I never had that with the job that I had. And so at first I was looking at flipping homes, believe it or not, because I knew nothing about real estate. And then I was like, I don't want to do that. That's transactional. It's kind of what I was just doing.
Totally.
And I started learning about investing a little bit in mobile home parks, and that can be a good cash flow vehicle. So I cold called like 90 plus mobile home parks in the Phoenix area, the owners, try to buy something on a seller carry. Because I had about 300K of cash, Tate, that I had relentlessly saved those years. I was following the Dave Ramsey plan, and got a little pop of equity from when I sold my equity in that company. And so I was living off of savings. And then, that didn't really work out. And I started listening to podcasts kind of like yours and started learning about multifamily and syndication. And that's when I decided, okay, you know what? That's what I want to do. Because I feel like I started realizing things were so competitive and was getting discouraged with mobile home parks, things like that. And I finally realized, I can't just keep bouncing around. I want to do multifamily. I believe in that. I like the whole idea of syndication where I can, go out to a network of investors and leverage their capital and they leverage my time. And it's a win-win. And so long story short, 14 months went by since I quit that job. And this is all I was doing. And so I burned through a ton of savings, basically like lost all my confidence and my self-identity because I didn't know what I was doing. And even my own parents were like, what are you doing? You're making like 200K a year. It's stupid. But 14 months go by and we finally closed the first deal. And it was a 36 unit, $3.5 million deal. It was just me and a few other people. We did not syndicate it. We all just put in big chunks of our own money. I brought in a 1031 exchange and we just bootstrapped that thing to close it however we could. We did a tenant in common. And that first deal gave us a lot of, experience, momentum, and confidence to then go forward and start syndicating, raising money from passive investors. And so we closed that first deal in February of 2019. And since then, we've been very blessed to have bought 35 different properties worth over $1.3 billion, all here in the Phoenix metro. Over 6,000 units. We're completely vertically integrated now. We started our own property management company, Rise 48 Communities. So we manage all of our own assets. We do all the construction management in-house, and we control our supply chain. We buy all of our materials directly wholesale. So we have over 150 plus full-time employees on full healthcare benefits.
Wow.
And we're just focused on, value-add multifamily syndication here in the Phoenix metro. So we've intentionally just stayed, laser focused on this one asset class, this one market, because we can kind of just rinse and repeat the same business plan over and over. And, as we started selling these deals, Tate, we started gaining a lot of interest and momentum with raising equity, which has allowed us to scale because we've now sold 11 of those deals that we've purchased and had really good returns for investors. And so that's allowed us to really scale with more equity demand so we can buy more deals, build out more infrastructure, things like that. So anyways, that's kind of, the summary of how I got to real estate where we're at today.
Yeah, that's a tremendous story and just an awesome trajectory to get you, to the point that you are. And 150 employees. I mean, that's big time scale. And you've clearly cracked the code on that. And like being in that Phoenix market over the last 2 years must have been very, very exciting for you guys as rents have just skyrocketed and values have skyrocketed there in the market. So you had a tremendous tailwind, and you probably still do have a tremendous tailwind even with the changing market. Phoenix is, depending on when you look at it, it's like the fastest growing city in the country. So yeah, you're in a great place. You're doing it in your own backyard. And that's, not everybody has that blessing of having a great market right where they are. We're in Salt Lake City, so we're a heavy growth market and not a cash flow market. And we invest in cash flow properties that appreciate. So we go elsewhere, and it's hard to manage out of state. There's nuances and there's just disadvantages that when you're there on, in the market, you have kind of home field advantage, if you will, where, you can drive by the properties, check on management, check on CapEx, all that stuff. And so, yeah, that sounds amazing. So let's go back to kind of where you started and in particular, that was there a moment for you, or an event that really shined the light on the multifamily space as an opportunity that you wanted to get into?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there wasn't necessarily like one specific moment, Tate. I mean, I was just unhappy at that job for over a year. They were going to sell. We kind of got into a dispute, which really kind of put a chip on my shoulder. And so I was like, you know what, screw you guys. I'm going to go into real estate. And I knew I wanted to do real estate anyways, but I didn't know what avenue, because I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I think that, I was looking at different things, and you kind of get that shiny object syndrome, right? Where you're looking at, like, oh, I can do self-storage, I can do mobile home parks, I can do real estate. And I finally realized, you know what, or multifamily. And I finally realized, you know what, I need to just kind of focus in here. And when I started looking at it, as far as like the inventory, the tax benefits, the appreciation that you can get, I just felt multifamily, is most sustainable and consistent over time. And, being in healthcare, I had a decent network of physicians and healthcare business owners that I knew that had no time, and probably could use some type of vehicle to invest their money in. And so for me, it made a lot of sense, but it was really a very like mentally and emotionally painful, long process, frankly, because it's intimidating, right? You know this firsthand. It's intimidating trying to get into this because these buildings are so big. These are big numbers. If you don't come from this industry, I felt like an outsider, especially being younger. I felt like I didn't belong. And so it's very intimidating, even reaching out to brokers, all these different things. But I think that once you decide, okay, this is what I want to do, and you just kind of stay set on that, and you keep attacking it over the long term, you start to, make that progress. So for me, it was more of a longer, it wasn't like a light bulb moment, I wouldn't say.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. And so, like, talk about your first steps when you made the choice to go into this space. Like, what were the first things you did?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I mean, initially I was like reading books, listening to podcasts, trying to absorb as much information as I could. I try to buy like online education materials, spend a couple grand on like an online educational videos, things like that, just to get a foundational knowledge of how these things work. And then, ultimately it's not rocket science conceptually of how this stuff works, right? And so at some point, rather quickly, you're going to learn how it works from a high level, and you have to start making moves. And so the first thing I did was like, you know what, I need to build a team like everybody talks about. So I went to a website to try to find the top property management companies in Phoenix. And I started cold calling them. I emailed and cold called the top 5 companies and set up in-person meetings with them. And I had read a couple books on property management. So I wrote down a bunch of notes, vetted them, all their accounting and operational processes. And then at the end of each meeting, Tate, I would say, hey, can you introduce me to some of the top real estate brokers, attorneys, insurance brokers, et cetera, in the market? And they'll say, yeah, sure. So then after the meeting, I call those referrals, say, hey, I got your name and number from so-and-so. I'm a multifamily syndicator. We're going to do this, this, and this. And it's kind of like you have to portray credibility, right? Because people are not mean, right? They're nice, but they don't want you to waste their time, right? So you have to portray some type of credibility where they think you're serious. So if you're coming from somebody who they know or has heard of as a legitimate person, and you at least sound like you can kind of talk the talk, or at least fake it till you make it, then it helps a lot. So I did that and went around each person to kind of build these different things, the different team members, so to speak. And then you have to ultimately, I think the biggest thing that people don't do, and we had a meetup and we had a bunch of people come to our meetup, and I would see the same people a year later and I say, hey, what's progress? And there's no progress. And the reason is they don't reach out to brokers. Okay. From my opinion, in my perspective, if you're sending direct mailers, cold calling, you're just wasting your time. Okay. There's not to say you can't make progress, but it's wasting your time. And so the brokers control the market in just about every market. So you need to go to LoopNet and look at, loopnet.com and look at which brokers, and those are probably crappy deals, but you'll at least see the brokers that are active in your market, in your space. and start emailing and cold calling these guys and say, hey, can I meet up for coffee? Or, hey, do you have anything listed right now? Can I go tour it? You need to get out in front of them, tour it, start underwriting deals, start making offers. And it's a scary thing. And a lot of people don't want to make an offer. And I was the same way, because you underwrite the deal and you're like, I'm 5 or 10 million off. Like, what's going on? I don't think I'm doing this right. And you may not be doing it right, but you might be doing it right. And the market's just so overheated the last several years that you just can't get close to the price. But you have to send those offers in, because you'll start to get their attention, because at least you're being active. So the biggest thing is, start getting in front of these real estate professionals. And then I think you need at least one like primary go-to business partner, right? Who has a complementary skill set, whose their strengths are your weaknesses, and vice versa. Right. So, I spent several months, trying to connect with people online, going to local meetups, and it was like pulling teeth, because I feel like I'm trying to educate people. Then I started flying to conferences, like in Dallas and different places, real estate conferences, family conferences. And that really opened my eyes, because it's like, oh my gosh, these people speak my language. Okay. It's not like I'm speaking a foreign language. They understand how this stuff works. Even if they haven't done it like me, they've at least been, digesting the materials and understand it. And so you need to kind of seek out another person, and you need to first identify, okay, what are your skill sets? What are your passions? Do you like to be the guy that's going to be, sourcing the deals, raising capital, managing relationships? Or are you more of a finance person? You want to be underwriting deals, you be in the Excel spreadsheets, et cetera. And so identify what you want to do, and then identify your weaknesses, and go find that complementary piece. And that's critical. And for me, Tate, it took a while. I probably, quote unquote, dated 7 or 8 different business partners. Some of them don't work as hard as you. Some of them, they're big and successful, and you can't get a hold of them. So you just feel like they're taking advantage of you. And one guy who was really hardworking, great guy. But after a couple months, I was like, you know what? We have the same skill set. This is not helping either one of us. So you kind of cut that off. So it's just kind of finding that right person that you can lean on and you can kind of grow with.
Yeah. That's great stuff. Some really good takeaways there. Start your broker relationships right away. Get out there, and you mentioned touring properties. That's so much better than going to coffee or lunch with these guys. I mean, these guys do coffee, lunch all the time, all day, every day. And if you show up at a property with your notepad and maybe a company brochure to hand the broker, and you're touring properties and then writing offers, or at least giving feedback on those properties with, in a timely manner, that's game changing, and it's going to elevate you in their eyes as a player versus somebody that's just trying to schmooze them. So yeah, that's a great takeaway. And, there's a lot of things there that are similar to what we did when we got started. I already had a partner, Carl York, who, he and I were doing single family stuff together. And so that was a great fit. And then, we were in partnership with somebody that, it just very recently didn't work out. And, that's going to happen. And, you just do the best you can. And when you bring on a partner into your company, there's no guarantees, and there's nothing that can make that. You can't do anything to have them step into the role of ownership and self-responsibility and everything else, and productivity. And, so that's one inherent risk, I think, of taking on, partners in your company as opposed to partners on a deal by deal basis. Right. I generally recommend partnering on a deal by deal basis until you work with somebody that you really vibe with and click with. Yep. At the same time, like, all this stuff requires that you have a deal in hand, or at least are moving towards a deal in hand, to really get going at a real level. So, and you mentioned too, finding somebody that complements your skill set, not matches your skill set. So, and the most important thing there is like self-knowledge, knowing yourself, and knowing what you're good at, knowing what you like to do, what you excel at, and filling in the gaps, and filling it, finding a partner that has a quite different set of skills and experience. And, that's gonna get you pretty far down the road, and get you moving towards that first deal. So, and then, okay, so Zach, just a little bit about scaling. How big was that first deal you guys did?
Yeah, it was 36 units.
Okay, that's right. You said that, about $3.5 million.
Yep, 3.5.
Yeah. Okay, and then do you remember what your next deal was size wise?
Yeah, the next deal was actually a portfolio of 2 deals. It was a 59 unit and a 76 unit. And so
Nice.
the same seller, the 59 unit, we did another tenant in common. We got like a handful of larger investors to take that one down. And then the 76 unit was our first formal syndication. We went out to several different passive investors. And so I think combined, the two were around 13 million or so.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's a really nice step up right there from a $3.5 million to what was, you said, about 10 million?
Yeah, about 13.
Yeah.
13 for the portfolio. Yeah. So we've always kind of tried to push the limit of what our growth can be, and helps a lot. And I mean, you have to be willing to take risk. I mean, you're putting up a lot of earnest money. I can say, by the time that we got to that first deal we had under contract, I had about $165K of cash left because I had spent money on mentorship, traveling around, et cetera, and having no income for over a year. I put 160 of the 165 into the first deal. So I was basically broke. So while I was in escrow for the first deal, I was like, you know what? I need more money. So I unloaded my house. I sold my house because I needed earnest money. And a week after I closed on the house, I made about 120K from my house. I wired 100K non-refundable into that next deal. You know what I mean? Because that's just what it takes if you want to win deals. And some people think that sounds crazy, but I believed that it was conservative and that it would perform well. And so it's always kind of pushing the comfort zone and being creative to achieve your goal. And so I think that it's never easy. It's always scary, right? It's always anxiety whenever you launch a new deal because you don't know if people are going to invest. You have no control over it. I mean, based on your track record and your familiarity, you can feel confident. But even recently, Tate, I mean, with the economy having a downturn, interest rates going up, we're going to launch a deal tomorrow, and we haven't launched a deal in about 6-7 weeks. So we don't know what the interest will really look like, right? We feel optimistic, but you never know. So,
right. And back to the partner thing for a second. You got to make sure that you've got a partnership with someone or multiple someones that at least have a similar mentality to you around this particular issue of pushing the envelope and scaling up and doing, gradual or, maybe even drastically bigger deals than the last one you did. And this is really like nuanced, but it's also really key. Like everybody's got limiting beliefs in this space, in this world. We all do. And they really kind of control the level that we can grow to. And if you bust up that limiting belief, you can grow more. Well, if you got a partner with a fear-based mentality and kind of freaks out when you want to go bigger and, step into a bigger deal and make things happen, man, that's tough. And that lack of alignment is gonna be really tough to navigate. And I'm just speaking from experience here.
No, you're 100% right. That's
very recent experience.
Point.
Yeah. So, I would really, number one, vet your own mentality, your own mindset around what are your limiting beliefs, because those are going to determine so much as a leader of what you can and can't do, and really take on, like, looking at busting those limiting beliefs up so that you can go big and excel. But I would also have these really kind of intimate conversations with anybody that you're thinking of bringing on board around what are their limiting beliefs, and conversely, what do they believe is possible? What do they want to see happen that they believe is possible? Because that's going to determine largely the trajectory you take as well. So, it's, again, you said it's not rocket science, right? But it is, like, on a mindset level, it's one of the, in my opinion, kind of most important things you'll ever do. And one of the trickiest things you'll ever do, to look at, where are your inherent fears around that determine and kind of run the show, like on what you can do and what you can't do. And, another way of saying this is that the most important real estate to develop is the real estate between your ears. Like, that is, so it's self-determining, really. Like if you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. That was the Henry Ford quote, I think. And that's so true. Like if you believe you cannot do something and you try to do it, you are swimming against a current that is going to be just about impossible to surmount. But conversely, if you believe you can and you show up and continue to take action and never quit, nothing can stop you in that realm. So really good stuff. Zach, do you have any thoughts on any of that?
No, I agree 100%. I think it was well said, Tate. You're exactly right. And as you go through the process, you're gonna have to push your own limits, because it's very easy to buy a deal or two and then, pat yourself in the back and feel like, hey, I did it. And you get complacent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when you start to get complacent, you start believing in your own hype, is when you're going to fall off and you're not going to grow anymore. You're not going to improve. And so even for us, it's very critical internally as part of our culture that we're always pushing our own comfort zone and we're not getting complacent, because it's easy to say, oh, we bought 6,000 units. We're the number one buyer in the state of Arizona the last 12 months. We just passed Blackstone. We could easily be like, oh, we're doing great, but you can't think that way, because then you're going to fall off. And momentum is a powerful thing, and it can work for you or against you. So for us, we were fortunate to kind of overcome the hurdles initially. Now we're on this momentum. But now we go into this, different phase of, okay, interest rates are up. You're in an economic recession. It'd be very easy for us to just kind of, just go crawl into a hole and say we're good. But no, we're trying to see how can we make deals work conservatively for investors? How can we adapt and shift our structure? And so we personally are going through this, what you're saying right now, Tate, but I think we're just at a different stage than somebody who's earlier on. But I've been through all those stages the past few years, and it's constantly, I tell people, and it's not a joke, I live in like a constant state of anxiety and fear and stress, because when you're growing as fast as we have, like we're always launching new deals and you have to always push that comfort zone. Like last deal we launched the end of June, I honestly thought we were going to lose our earnest money because it was such a big raise. But we pulled through and we made it happen. You know what I mean? And so when you start to push your comfort zone, then you really start to teach yourself about yourself and what you can do. And it gives you experience and confidence going forward. But yeah, the partnership is such a critical piece. And I think, I've recognized that, I'm probably the most aggressive person of the three of our partners. So we got Bikron and Robert and myself. And, I think they're more risk averse, and I'm kind of the guy to push them and to portray the confidence, and not show the weakness, for our staff, things like that. So yeah, you have to have people who, even if they're not on the same page as you, like you said, some people might be more fear-based. Well, then if you want to grow and you want to bring them with you and you guys are good partners, you have to establish the trust on their behalf and kind of prove to them that you can get through the adverse moments and be the leader. Because then when there's going to be another scary moment, even though they're scared, they're going to be like, okay, Tate brought us through this. And so I believe in him. So whatever happens, we'll make it happen. So yeah, it is very critical, I think, on who your partners are. And it's not to say you can't change, because you're going to have to develop. So if you feel like you have a partner who's really good, but they're fear-based, well, then maybe it's up to you to push them over the ledge, so to speak, and bring them with you and make sure you perform so that you give them that confidence in the future.
Yeah. And one of the things I get from you, Zach, is this element of like, at the end of the day, you're 100% responsible for your company and the way that it runs. And that level of like accountability and the buck stops here is really powerful. Like, I do my best to bring my A game every day and have that be the case with me. And that's the leader that your team deserves. And that's the kind of leader that's going to do big things and, do $1 billion portfolios and 150 employees. Like that takes epically strong leadership. And, in this business, like you said, there's kind of hairy times. Like, you got a deal that needs to close and a deadline coming up, and you're not sure where the equity's coming from. And like that happens. And it happens kind of regularly in this business. So you got to have a really bulletproof mindset, in my opinion, that is, like you said, shows up confident. Everything's cool here. Everything's going to be okay. I've got this, and we're going to make it through it. Like, and that translates to the next issue, the next time that comes up, in the sense of like, you've grown the trust of the people you're leading, and the next time it comes up, they're not going to be as fear-based or as fearful about the circumstances.
Yep. No, 100%. Yeah, you're exactly right. So yeah, there's just processes that you kind of have to go through. And yeah, I think you said it best, Tate. Accountability is key, right? Because if you're going to be the one that pushed the envelope, well, then if things don't go right, then you need to take the blame for it, right? And because if you need to take that pressure, so it can benefit you both ways. When you're successful, you're going to get a lot of the credit, whether it's due to you or not. And when you're in hairy times, you're going to get a lot of the pressure. And if you don't succeed, you're going to get the blame. And so, yeah, you have to have, I think, that person on your team. And this obviously applies to any company or anything in life, I think, if you want to be successful. But yeah, that's critical to kind of be accountable there. And yeah, so I think you want to start out with your partnership, finding complementary skill sets. And then as you start to grow with them, and you made a good point. I think most people, including me, initially you take it deal by deal. You're not like locked in. But as we started doing, what do we do? Like 5 or 6 deals together, we realized, okay, this is our group. Like, so we got quote unquote married and created a combined brand, Rise 40 Equity. Before, we all had our own personal brands, right? I was ZH Multifamily, Bikram was Bright Investors, Robert was RNA. But then when we started to decide, okay, you know what? We want to have this unified brand to go to investors with and build out like a quote unquote real company where we have positions in the company. We're going to start hiring staff. We converted to an S Corp. We started taking salaries, and so that we could support overhead. And so it was after we decided, this is our guy. These are my guys. This is my group, and then you're going to scale together. But that does take time, right? And so when you start to go through some of those, arduous moments, you start to realize, well, how did they react? Because you might be friendly the next first 6-12 months, but then when you get into a sticky situation, did they blame you, or did you guys fight? Or it's fine to fight, but did you get over it? Did you guys work through? So it's like a marriage, right? It's a business marriage. And so those are things to be aware of for sure.
Yeah. Well said. Cool. So, what's the future look like for you guys? Are you 1.5? Is that what you said? 1.5 billion or 1.3?
Yeah. So we've purchased a little over, I think we've purchased like 1.4. We've done like 1.6 of transactions. So we've sold 11 deals. So we've done 1.6 of total transactions of purchases and sales. Right now we have 1.2 under management as of today. Wow. And so we're continuing to just kind of build out infrastructure. We want to keep scaling the Phoenix market. It's such a large market. And, we do really have a big advantage here now with the brokers and all of our infrastructure. So we're going to continue to do a good job. But yeah, I mean, going forward, we want to look at potentially either in 3 to 4 years, either possibly going public or just creating a large institutional fund where we have a hybrid approach. So we want to continue our retail syndication model, which is what we've done. Everything to this point has just been pure retail investors. We've had thousands of investors invest with us, 50 to 100K typically. And we want to continue that. We like that model, but we also see a lot of potential to kind of follow a model like Blackstone has done, where you basically start to create these funds and you raise institutional capital. And it's not necessarily private equity groups that you're doing JVs with, because we don't really like that model. We want to raise money from like endowments and state pension funds and places like that. So you have this, institutional fund where you can start to go buy other deals in different markets. And so that's an abstract goal that we're actually talking about, and maybe might be like doing like a restructure of our organization to prepare for that in the next few years. But in the short term, we want to just continue to do a good job with operations, keep building out infrastructure here, and make sure we're doing a good job for our investors. And so we don't have any immediate plans to expand because we feel like Phoenix, to your point earlier, it's the fastest growing city, Tate, in the last 5 years. In a down period, it's one of the most insulated, if not the most insulated market in the country, which COVID proved. And in the good times, you get that explosive growth, right? So it's actually very similar to Salt Lake. It's just Salt Lake's obviously smaller, not as much inventory. Right. But yeah, so that's kind of our focus, is just continue to stay focused on operations and keep getting better.
Yeah, I love it. Awesome, Zach. So to kind of bring this full circle, it's probably pretty hard for you to even remember, but before you started in this space, and you had considered getting into it and you were doing the things to ramp up, what do you think the most important takeaway for you was from that time that might be valuable to a listener that's in a similar spot, coming from a $1.2 billion a portfolio owner? I think this is going to be really valuable.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, Tate. And yeah, one thing, and I know the answer immediately. One thing that I realized going through that process, remember, I was living off savings for over a year. So I went from getting fat paychecks every 2 weeks to having nothing coming in. I would wake up in the morning. I didn't know what to do that day. And it was very discouraging because it's like, I want to work hard. I want to progress. I want to move the needle, but there's nobody to hold you accountable, nobody to tell you what to do. It's hard to even find tangible evidence that you're making progress each day. So it's very discouraging. So, and I started facing adversity, and I'm not going to get like dramatic. I wasn't like depressed, but you start to like hear other people doubt you, and it has effect on you emotionally, mentally. One thing I learned then, which has continued to stay true now, is that my advice is that don't take crap from anybody. Like, do not listen to anybody who tells you can't do it, because they're not going to put the work in to get to your goal anyways. So why would you listen to what they have to say? Because I started having a lot of people that I looked up to saying, "Oh no, you can't do that," or "There's no way you can do it," and it would just devastate me. You know what I mean? It would really, and there was multiple times where I kind of quit. Like emotionally, and then like you just pick yourself up a few days later, and you're like, "No, I'm gonna keep going." And so you can't listen to other people because everybody has an opinion, especially if they haven't done it. Then why would you listen to them? And there's going to be people that you view as successful, that you really value their opinion, or maybe they're your mentor, so to speak. But if they're not going to help you get where you want to be, or they tell you can't do it, then you really don't need them. And that has continued as we start to scale. That we're constantly facing doubters, and this could apply to anybody's journey in any aspect of life. But my whole thing is like, if you believe in your goal and that's what you want to do, then you just got to stay focused on it and don't quit. Because if you don't quit, you will eventually get there. And it's just, you just cannot listen to other people who are gonna, and through that process, you will gain, very thick skin, and you start to think for yourself, and you start to think creatively and stop kind of following the herd, right? And I think that's how you become successful is you have to do what other people are not doing, if you want to elevate yourself. So
I love all that. And when you say you got to do what other people aren't doing, the analogy there is fishing upstream from the pond that everybody's fishing in. And that just means doing work, like going to work and doing maybe the tough stuff that other people aren't willing to do. And I love what you said about, kind of not letting anyone steal your thunder and break your, your vibe and your mojo. Like, that's super key, because you've got enough in your own head to deal with in that regard. Right. And conversely, like, you actually want to be surrounding yourself with people that not only believe that you can do it, but have even done it themselves. And, you mentioned national conferences earlier. That's a great place to do that. Masterminds, online masterminds. And then, I'm a big believer in paid mentorships, paid coaching, ideally kind of one-on-one. But that whole concept of that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, that's real, like, in my opinion. Like that you're either going to level up or you're going to not level up, and maybe even go the other way. And that's it's really based on who you have around you. And for me, that's what was so cool about starting to go to these national conferences when we were new. The idea of being in a room of 800, 500 people that are at a level in this business that you're not yet and that you want to be at, or there's other people trying to get to that same spot, and like everybody's kind of working on the same stuff and in the same space. And so to me, there's just no replacement for that. Like, your local RIA meetings, your Real Estate Investor Association meetings, you mentioned meetup groups, but before, I believe, like, that stuff is all really, really good and important. And so absolutely slash the guys out of your life, or the gals out of your life that are telling you can't do it. And conversely, fill those gaps in with people that believe in you and believe in the plan and the space. So really good stuff, Zach. Yeah. Any kind of like final thoughts here before we wrap things up?
No, I don't think
Okay.
so. I mean, as far as, I guess we're recording this like what, beginning to middle of August 2022. Tate, I guess
Yep.
our thoughts, a lot of people ask me like what are your guys' thoughts on the market? I
Yep.
can only speak to Phoenix, but I think this applies to a lot of the country, is that, we're still very bullish on value add multifamily, in
Yep.
Phoenix, even across the country. I think it's going to continue to be very well insulated and resilient even during a downturn.
Yep.
So we're still making offers on deals, or we actually just got a couple deals under contract.
Cool.
And we've adjusted our debt. So you have to adapt with the changing, cycle. And so
Yep.
I think that's kind of our feedback as far as everything.
Yeah, I love that. And like, it's so hard for people like you and me to put their pencils down and
I know.
not do deals. Like,
Yeah.
so we're in the same boat. Like we're sourcing good deals and putting longer term fixed rate debt on it, and we're prepared to ride out any downturn that might come up. So I think that's the key right now. And there's other nuances to how you want to go about acquiring deals, but I think that those are kind of the main simple points. So,
Yeah.
well, dude, so if there's listeners out there that want to reach you and learn more about you and maybe even reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah. Thanks, Tate. You can go to our website, rise48equity.com. So RISE48equity.com. And there's actually a link where you can set up a call with me if you want to learn more about what we're doing, or you can email me, Zach, ZACH at rise48equity.com, and happy to talk to anybody who's interested in what we're doing.
That's awesome. Yeah. And, listeners, take Zach up on that. Like, he's here to help as much as I am and anybody else. And that's why he's on the show, is because he's looking to add value to you. So this is like the next level step. We just talked about how important it is to surround yourself with people that know the business, love the business, and can help you with it. And, Zach's one of those guys. I'm one of those guys. There's a lot of them out there, and, highly, highly encourage you, spend with me. I've got a 10-minute appointment on my Calendly. I've got a 20-minute appointment on my Calendly. Like, and Zach just said, reach out to him. So like, even if it's 10, 15 minutes, you're going to get really great feedback from us, because we're focused on you. It's like a mini mastermind, right? Like, just brainstorming your business. So dude, awesome work getting where you are. And your level of scale and the vertical integration, all that stuff is just very, very impressive. And, I'm sure you're just going to keep crushing it in the apartment space. So
yeah, no, thanks so much. Tate. Thanks so much, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having us on, and for everybody for taking the time. And same to you, Tate. You'll keep crushing it. So really appreciate it.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of the Apartment Gurus podcast. Really happy you joined us today. And we love when you leave a rating and review on whatever platform you're listening on. That's very helpful. So with that, we're doing 2 of these a week now. And so we'll see you here in the next couple days. Take care, everybody.
This has been the Apartment Gurus with Tate Siemer. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and review on your favorite podcast platform. To contact Tate, go to www.investwithgreenlight.com for access to his investor portal and Calendly link. He loves to hear from you and thanks you for being a valued listener. Just a reminder that you are the guru. See you on the next episode of the Apartment Gurus.